In this lecture module, we're going to pivot away from talking about abstract schemas of traditional theories or moves that one could make to modify one's traditional causal theory in light of problematic cases. We're going to look at a concrete instance of a causal theory. We're going to look at the causal theory offered up by Alvin Goldman in his 1967 Journal of Philosophy article that was one of the readings assigned to you for this week. We'll start by looking at the nature of the theory itself. We'll try and understand what it is supposed to be a theory of. I'm not completely sure that Goldman's totally consistent here, but we'll want to try and understand it in the best light possible. Once we sort of clarify the nature of the theory and the claims that it makes, then we'll turn our attention to going through each of the clauses individually, seeing how each of the clauses works within the context of the overall theory. The most troublesome cases will be the third clause, introduction of two different kinds of causal chains that you can potentially reconstruct using inferences in order to get knowledge. So we'll look at pattern 1, that's one of those causal chains, and then we'll look at pattern 2, the other causal chain, and see how that's supposed to work in the context of that third clause in order to generate knowledge. Once we feel we have a pretty good handle on Goldman's theory and how it's supposed to work, then we'll look at how he thinks it deals with Gettier cases in specific. We'll end the lecture by looking at some cases that I think pose some serious problems for the theory. We'll start by looking at a set of cases that I think shows that the theory can't capture the necessary conditions for knowledge, and I call those cases the reliable correlation cases. Then we'll look at a set of cases that I think shows that the theory can't capture the sufficient conditions for knowledge, and we'll call those the discrimination cases. So one appeal of the causal strategy lies in the fact that humans are causal mechanisms embedded in a causal world. But the causal strategy has an additional appeal to philosophers based on its claimed effectiveness in dealing with these Gettier-type cases. Now, though Goldman doesn't make this claim in his paper and doesn't see his theory in this light, lots of philosophers adopt a causal clause as a means of introducing a warrant clause, that additional clause to be added to the justified true belief definitional theory of knowledge that will prevent those Gettier-type cases where our justification and its normal truth conduciveness is split off from the actual reason why our belief turns out to be true in a way that makes our belief justified but makes it a failure of knowledge. The warrant clause, or in this case the causal clauses, are supposed to prevent that from happening. Now, Alvin's paper is a little bit different. His project is different. Strictly speaking, he says he's not giving a definition. He describes his project as another analysis or sketch of an analysis of S knows that P. He also refers to his analysis as a theory of knowledge. Now, these descriptions are not equivalent to a definition in his mind, though he does in fact present his theory as a definition, specifying individually necessary and jointly sufficient conditions for the sentence form to be true. So, like I said, it's not quite clear that he's completely consistent in what he's saying here. But what he says is that he sees himself as attempting to explicate the meaning of the sentence form S knows that P in the vague and imprecise arena of ordinary or common usage. So here's the theory as presented on page 369 and 370. S knows that P, if and only if, the fact that P is causally connected in an appropriate way with S's believing P. Now, that in and of itself has the precise form of a definitional theory of knowledge. We have that biconditional connecting S knows that P to a set of conditions that are individually necessary and jointly sufficient. So it looks a lot like a traditional definitional theory of knowledge. But Goldman says he's not quite trying to do that. He puts some qualifiers on it. He says he's trying to explicate the ordinary understanding of things, that that's not as rigorous as that phrasing suggests. And so we'll keep that in mind as we go through. Now, appropriate, of course, is a strange word to introduce there. And so he gives us a series of conditions that would be appropriate knowledge-producing processes. 1, perception. 2, memory. 3, a causal chain exemplifying either pattern 1 or 2, which is correctly reconstructed by inferences, each of which is warranted. Background propositions help warrant an inference only if they are true. We're going to have to unpack that one. And then, of course, 4 combinations of 1, 2, and 3. So let's go through each of these clauses in isolation. If Peter sees Alvin and forms a perceptual belief. Holy crap, it's Alvin. Then, according to Alvin, here we have a case where the fact that P, his being Alvin Goldman, causes Peter's belief, oh my God, it's Alvin Goldman, via perception, one of those processes. Hence, according to the theory in clause 1, it counts as knowledge. Our second clause has to do with memory. So Peter sees Alvin. That triggers his memory. His memory is causally connected to the fact that he borrowed money from Alvin, and that causal connection, as embedded in his memory, causes him to form the belief, oh, I owe Alvin Goldman money. And according to Alvin's clause 2 then, here we have a case where the fact that P, Peter owing him money, causes Peter's belief that P via memory, and hence it counts as knowledge by clause 2. Now these are relatively straightforward. The next one is a little more complicated. Clause 3 specifies those two different patterns of causal chain. The first one looks as follows. The fact that P causes the evidence from which the belief that P is generated by deduction or induction. So it's an inference from evidence, and the fact that P is the cause of the evidence for the belief, but importantly, we have to be able to reconstruct that connection between the fact and the evidence as part of the reason why we form our belief. So how's that supposed to go? Well, suppose we've got a polluted lake here. That polluted lake causes a poor fish to mutate. Along comes a scientist. The scientist sees that fish mutation, and the scientist then makes the following inference or claim. Oh my goodness, I infer from the mutated fish that the lake is polluted based on an inferential reconstruction of the causal chain from pollution to mutation using induction. That's how pattern 1 is supposed to work. I have evidence. I make an inference about the fact that caused that evidence. Then I form a belief based on that inferential reconstruction that that fact is in fact true. That's my belief. What about our pattern 2 causal connection? Our pattern 2 causal connection connects the fact and the evidence from which we reconstruct a causal chain to form a belief. They're connected not directly, but through a common cause. So let's bring in our cigarette company executive to help us out here. You see, the desire to smoke, one effect, and lung cancer, another effect, are caused by the same genetic defect, common cause. So we have our person here. They've got that genetic defect. It causes them both to smoke and to get lung cancer. Then they make an inference. Judging from my lung cancer, the effect, and what cigarette companies tell me, I believe that I, other effect, desire to smoke based upon evidence having a common cause with the desire to smoke. So now that we've got all of the components of Goldman's causal theory down, let's take a look at how he deals with these Gettier cases. So in our Smith has 10 coins in his pocket, Jones has 10 coins in his pocket, who gets the job case, we see that Smith sees Jones has 10 coins in his pocket, from which he comes to believe Jones has 10 coins in his pocket. He hears the chair say, the man with 10 coins in his pocket will get the job, and then he makes an inference from that to believe that the chair knows Jones has 10 coins in his pocket, from which he then comes to believe Jones will get the job based on his inference. Alvin says, whoa, wait a minute now. The inferences incorrectly reconstruct the causal chain, thus no knowledge. So for Alvin, all of the Gettier cases are going to rely upon an inference that reconstructs the connection between the fact and the evidence that we have from which we form the belief. In the next and the last lecture module, we'll evaluate Goldman's response to these Gettier cases, and we'll look at some other problematic cases for this view.